Today on Core Conversations, we have Brett Howard. Brett Howard is the director of two teacher trainings, one in the US and one in Korea. So as we talked today, we talked about the importance of communication, the interesting point that the more we learn about Pilates, the less we actually know, and other things that just spoke to the fact that we are returning to life through Contrology. This is his passion, working with rehab, working with corrective exercise. We touched on so many different topics. We had such a great time. Enjoy the conversation. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man.
Good. Good morning, everybody.
So we have we'll see your people start to pop up here on the thread as well.
Great.
So how are you doing?
I'm good. I really can't complain. Everyone's having a hard time right now, but, I consider myself blessed. My family's healthy. All the people who are very close to me are healthy. And so I think that's the most important thing. Business-wise, things could be better, but, we have to look at the things that are most important.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I do want to dive deep on that, just like business-wide, how you're doing. You're an icon. People really see you as like the man to some degree, right? So there's so many people that want to hear what are you doing, how are you pivoting? Because it's one thing to be a Pilates instructor that you have your little studio in the corner of the world somewhere. It's another thing to be, as Uni says, a celebrity. It's another thing to be kind of, in the light a little bit more, and then seeing, well, I'm struggling just as much as the next person. So how do we adjust that, right? So before we even get into that, for those of you out there, please just say your name and what your business name is, and we'll just go from there.
Yep, no problem. So yeah, my name is Brett Howard, and my business is the Pilates Haus, which is my studio. Then I also have a training program I work with, which is the United States Pilates Association, and I'm a co-owner in that. And then also my third one is Classic Pilates Institute, which is a Pilates training program in Korea.
Oh, wow, Korea.
Yes.
Awesome. There's a whole lot of people actually from Korea that I follow on my Real Men Do Pilates site. So
one of my students, he is a teaser man. So
yes, okay.
Yeah,
I follow teaser man.
yeah. I know that he's does a lot of videos. But he's one of my students.
Very cool.
And actually, Vanessa Park, who just signed on, she's also one of my students as well.
Nice. How'd you get connected with Korea? With that?
Actually, that's it. Well, I guess how it originally happened is that people I work with, Leaf Pilates, there's two people in charge, and that is Fiona and Jason Kim. And so Fiona took a workshop with me at a Fletcher conference, maybe about 8-9 years ago. And then so she said she had wanted to work with me more. And then about a year later, I went to Korea for the first Pilates in Asia conference, and I met with her and her husband, Jason. And so they asked me if I would come and start working with them. And so I first started with just a couple of workshops, and then we decided to move forward and do a training program together.
Okay.
And they're great to work with. I really love them. I love my apprentices there. So it's a great opportunity.
That's amazing. I think when we have an opportunity to scale out what we do and to share our passion for any craft like that, I think that's a great honor. So yeah, good for you, man.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I like about teaching Pilates the most is that I have the opportunity to go around the world and work with so many different people. And I think it makes you learn a lot more because you're getting experience to so many different types of cultures. But at the same time, it brings more of a togetherness because everywhere I go, I realize everyone is exactly the same. We have the same problems, same issues, same things we like. And so in a way, it kind of brings you closer. And it just gives you a lot more respect for other people.
Who are your favorite type of people to work with? And I ask it like that because I have personal trainers on here and I have Pilates instructors, and think if someone was to come into your Pilates studio and just you just love these type of people, like you wouldn't have to charge this person $1 because these are like their favorite person you can work with the rest of your life. What would that person look like to you?
In terms of clients,
Clients.
I would say I definitely always turn on with injuries. So
Oh,
when someone comes in and they need help, that's where I really turn on. That's what excites me. I like working with everyone, of course, but I like to help people. And I always say Joseph Pilates couldn't have named his book any better, Return to Life through Contrology, because
yes.
that's what Pilates does. It gives people their lives back. And I like being a part of that and really, helping people go from where they feel like there's no hope to back to normalcy.
Mm, yeah, Misty was on earlier last week, and she was saying the same thing, almost in tears, just talking about just the passion of giving people their life back. Like
Yeah,
we actually have the power to give people their life back through Pilates. That is crazy to think about. Like
it really is, but it's something so rewarding.
so rewarding.
Yeah.
And I work with a lot of athletes and men and stuff, and I feel like for myself personally that working with injuries and rehab and corrective exercise isn't my personal passion.
Mhm.
It's more along the lines of like performance and helping people figure out that missing link or find out that one muscle that never fired until we exposed it in Pilates type thing. So the performance side of things. So when I hear people that passionate about the corrective exercise and the rehab side of it too, like I just kudos to you because I feel like sometimes I don't have the patience for that.
Well, I think you do. It's just that everyone has their likes, things that they like a little bit more. And
Yes.
yeah, and also things change as well. I find that my journey through Pilates has been, it's gone like this. So things that I used to think about or things that I like more have changed, and it's probably going to change again. I know I
Yes.
used to be a dancer,
Okay.
and I used to have my own dance company for, I would say about for 5 years. This was in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
And but right now, unfortunately, I'm not dancing anymore, and I still take dance class. I had stopped for like a good like maybe 10 years, but now
10 years,
I'm doing
eh?
now I'm doing the Instagram live, and
Okay.
so every Wednesday, a friend of mine, and with two of us, we take a Cunningham class. So I was a ballet modern dancer, but the
Okay.
type of dance that I like to do the most was a type of technique called Cunningham.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of fun now that this experience has allowed me to go back to some things I used to like to do before.
Yes.
And I have to say, my body doesn't move exactly the same way. I was like, wow, I used to be able to get my leg up so much higher.
Yeah.
And wow, my back used to curve so much better. So
Hmm.
it's a little bit humbling at the same time, but it's still
Yes.
fun to be able to do that.
Yes. Is it now? I'm not from the dance world, but like, do you find that because like, do you do a lot of like your own Pilates and workouts, and that requires your body to be a different way and move a different way than dance, or like what?
Um, yes and no. So
Okay.
I do Pilates every day actually. It's something I feel that I need to do. It's kind of like my ADVIL. And
Yes.
what happens is, especially being a former dancer, you kind of wear your body out. And so our bodies start to deteriorate a little bit quicker than other people because we've pushed our body to extremes. We've done things with our body that you really shouldn't be doing naturally.
Yes.
And, that's the performance side of it. And so Pilates actually helps me in that way because if I didn't have that, um, I would probably be kind of a mess. But when I was a dancer, actually, though, Pilates was one of the things that helped me have a much higher skill level.
Okay.
And it helped me a lot with my technique. So a lot of the things that you do in Pilates can be translated to what you do in dance. And so you're working on different skills in dance. You can, replicate that in Pilates. So it is different, but there are things that, you know, I don't do anymore, like jumping anymore. I can jump with the jump board, that's fine, but I don't jump anymore in
Yes.
terms of doing leaps or even just regular jumps. My body just doesn't want to do that anymore. So there
Yes.
are some things that are slightly different.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
But one thing actually that Pilates did is that when I was a dancer, I had a stress fracture in my shin bone.
Okay.
And that's not so uncommon, and a lot of the times it's because dancers when they land they don't allow their heels to land softly.
Yes.
Mine was actually the opposite. I had a very powerful jump, and I was jumping more from my feet instead of from my powerhouse, really, from my pelvis and from
Yes.
my glutes.
Right.
And so I was taking all the work in my shin because I have a very long tibia. And so I had to stop dancing for a couple months and allow my stress fracture to heal. Kind of when it happened, it was almost a full break when I finally went to the doctor because
Oh,
dancers, we actually can take quite a lot of pain, so we just keep
yes.
pushing, and
Right. Right.
so by the time I went to the doctor and I got the X-ray, they're like, "This is almost a clean break," which they're like, "You could have landed and it could have snapped completely in half," and I'm
Yeah.
like, "I'm so glad that didn't happen because I never would have got over that,"
I
but
know, right?
but when I went back to dance, I was actually much stronger because through Pilates, strengthening my core, strengthening my glutes, and also reworking my jump through the jump board, actually with Bob
Yes.
Leakins. Bob Leakins did
Okay.
a lot of that with me on the jump board.
Okay.
I was able to go back and be stronger, and also I didn't
Mm,
get a stress fracture to return. And at the time, three of
amazing.
us had stress fractures. I was the only one whose stress fracture did not return, and I think it's from
Wow.
Pilates. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
I started Pilates about around 16 years old. So
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm originally from Pittsburgh, and so I was training with two instructors there.
Mhm.
And at that time, there weren't so many people doing Pilates. And then when I went to New York, I did a little Pilates with a woman named Wendy Amos, who she teaches at the Alvin Ailey Dance School. And they back then they called it what did they call that actually? Body conditioning, because at the time that was you
Yes.
couldn't really call Pilates unless you were with Sean Gallagher.
Hmm.
So that was during the whole lawsuit
Gotcha.
era, and but it was Pilates. So Wendy was a student of Kathy Grant's, so she trained with her in the I believe the early 70s, maybe late 60s. And then when I went to Purchase had that's the school I went for my undergrad. They had a full studio,
Oh, nice.
and we were able to get Pilates privates for I think $40, and then which is kind of crazy,
Yes.
and mat classes were free for us. And so
Right.
I really got into it then, and that's actually when I got certified as well. So I got certified at 18 years old.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. It's like, yeah, the good old days, as Uni says there. Yeah. So if you got certified at 18, like how, like you've done a ton of courses since then and continue to just dive deeper and deeper and deeper with it then.
Yes, it's a journey that's continuing. I'm a big believer in always continuing to learn, never stop learning. And
Yes.
it's funny, when I first started Pilates, I was like, oh, I got this, I know this. And then the more and more I teach, the more I'm like, I don't know anything.
I know, right? Yes.
So,
Yes.
but I love like getting information, and I learn from taking workshops, but I also learn from doing before this happened, I was taking, a private or a class at least once a week.
Mhm.
And, but I also learn from my students, like my
Yes.
clients. Every day, I'm getting new information of how to work
Mm.
with them. And
Yes.
also from my apprentices, finding different ways of explaining things to them. I learn different things. And
Absolutely.
even
Yeah.
sometimes with testing, like, they might do something that's a little different than I taught them. And I go, that's not exactly what I would have done, but actually that's a very interesting way of doing that. And
Yes.
so you can learn from anybody.
You can, and a friend of mine on the show one time said, "We are white belts forever."
Yes, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and you think that he's arrived and maybe one or two more belts to go, but like that sense of I'm always a white belt, there's always something new to learn. And like you said, I love learning from other teachers, like there's our students, I should say, because they have a different eye and they see
Yeah.
things differently. It's like my kids, we'll go to a car show, and there's times we'll take like pictures from different angles, right? And we'll have like a competition to see who can take the best picture of a car. And my kids would be like 4 or 5 years old at the time, and their perspective
Yeah.
is so different. And we have the same car, the same red car, but their picture is better because they're seeing it from a different angle than I did from my vantage point. And I think our students see it that way too.
Yeah. I think I always tell people train it with as many people as you can, because everyone's going to have a different perspective
Yes.
or a different experience. And
Hmm.
even people who, other Romana Pilates people who, train with Romana, we all have a different experience with Romana. So I always say,
Yes.
if you want to get this a little bit more, go work with that person. They actually got a
Mm.
lot more of it than I did. Or go work with that person. They learned more than I did. I learned maybe this. So then that way you're
Yes.
really getting a full spectrum of the work.
It's funny you say that, Brett, because as I was thinking about our conversation today, a lot of times people differentiate Pilates between classical and contemporary, and that's their separation. And this might sound funny to you, but the way that I almost separate Pilates is people who danced and people who didn't dance.
Mm.
And part of that is because they come at Pilates having different needs when they went into Pilates than an athlete or a desk person who sits at a desk, right? So the needs of those people are different. So that when they're taking Pilates, learning Pilates, becoming instructors in their Pilates, when they have a dance background, there's almost a different lens that they look at it at, and it's not
Mm.
better or worse
Yeah.
than someone who comes from an athletic background or a sports background or a sports science background when they find Pilates and then they start to hold on to it and they teach it. So it's just I find that is almost more of a pronounced delineation for me as an instructor as I'm shopping my instructors and learning on my Pilates journey.
Yeah, I always say to my students, take the experience, your past experiences, and that's what's going to actually make you the teacher that you are, and honor those different experiences. And,
Mm,
definitely coming from a dance background, you are going to have a certain perspective. There's a certain amount of, a lot of people come from dance backgrounds. There's a certain amount of musicality in the way that they teach in terms of the
yes,
rhythm.
yes.
That's, in terms of taking movement on, they're going to take it on a different way as well. Because, dancers, obviously, when given something, that's our job actually, is to be able to take
Express
movement
it.
and go with it really quickly.
Hmm.
But it was interesting though when you worked with Romana though, you had to wear different hats. So there was like two different sides of her. So my experience was that the experience of an apprentice, and as apprentice with her, I was a dancer. But then also, you had opportunities to watch her work with people who were in their like 70s, 80s, 90s, and
Hmm.
some of those people were actually even clients of Joseph Pilates, and so you kind of got a big spectrum of it. And so what I did was I decided to focus a lot more on observing her work with more I call them everyday people, which is horrible.
Yes, I know what
People
you
who are
mean.
not people who are not dancers. I don't know why I say that, but
I
I had a certain amount of body awareness. I wanted to be able to put myself in other people's shoes,
Yes.
and I think that's very important as a Pilates instructor to just because something might come easily, not that everything does come easily to me, but certain movements might come easier. You have to
Yes.
be able to have empathy for other people.
Empathy.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and that's good that you mentioned that because that's the one thing that we have to bring to every client. Even the injured dancer needs that same empathy as that person who, has limited mobility, right? So
Mm.
yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, like Chris Robinson, for example, right? Like coming to Pilates from a fight background, like as a
Yeah.
fighter, as opposed to someone like Jean-Claude Nelson who comes from a dance background. Like, I mean, those are
Yeah.
two different bodies doing the same thing.
Yeah, and that's what makes our community and our industry rich. Actually,
Very rich.
it's very important not to have people all from the same type of background. And
Hmm.
like I said before, it's important to then work with as many different type of instructors as possible because it's going to make you more well-rounded. I have two different programs. I have
Yeah.
the United States Pilates Association, and I also have the Classic Pilates Korea. And both of those are classical Pilates programs, and 670, pretty much around 675 hours. Um, that's including the modules as well as the observation and practice and teaching and the apprenticeship of it. What I think what's unique about it is what we bring to it. And so what I do is I just bring my experiences of what I've had. And I try to then make things easier for my instructors. So things that might have been confusing to me along my journey, things that I figured out, I try to share that with them to make things simplified for them.
Yes.
And my background also is an educator, so I have a master's in education, and I pull from that. That's what I like,
That
pull.
helps.
Yeah, I, I talk about, always pull from your experiences. I have experience as a dancer, but I also have experience as an educator. So those are two things that I feel fairly strong at. And so that's how I teach. Those are my lenses that I teach through.
Yeah.
And so I like to try to make things as clear as possible for my students, but also help them to become good teachers. So I don't want to have them to be practitioners only, but also how can you be the best teacher, best way to explain things to people who don't have your type of background or your type of knowledge of the work. So that's really my goal, is to make the best teachers that I can.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can hear through what you're saying, like that communication is so important to you, that empathy is so important to you that it almost would be, I don't want to say it's an offense to you, but if I was to say, well, you're just a dancer who taught Pilates, you would think like, no, I have compassion and can see what everyone needs. Like, so don't box me in as
Oh, it's okay.
most people.
I didn't take it that way.
Yeah, okay. No, and I know you didn't, but I can see that like you're so passionate about making sure that we can help human beings.
Well, that's really your job as a Pilates instructor. Everyone's
Yes.
job is to, help people with this type of movement. And, if someone's not, I always tell my students, if someone's not getting the movement that you're trying to explain to them, it's not their fault. And I tell them, there are some people who are quite dense,
Yes.
There's definitely like, what is going on in that head? But at the same time, it's still our fault, because that's our job if they're not getting the exercise or the movement or what you're trying to convey to them, because obviously then you're not explaining it in a way that they can understand it. That's your job, is to explain in a certain way that they'll be able to understand it and be able to replicate it.
Yes. What's that Mr. Miyagi saying? There are no bad students, only bad teachers.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it. We have to take that ownership in terms of our communication and how we say it. It's like love languages, right? Like, do we love the way we want to be loved, or love in a way that the person can receive that love? Like, do we communicate in ways that they can hear that communication, or do we communicate in the way that we think is the best way to communicate? Like, I'm going to be authoritative, or I'm going to just give you quick cues, or I'm going to be all hands on. Like, there's so many different ways to communicate.
And you have to go back and forth with it. I always say you have to figure out who your learner is, and you have to teach to their learning, the way that they learn. There's a guy named Howard Gardner. He talks about multiple levels of intelligence, and he categorized it into 9 different types of intelligences, and everyone has their gift, and you have to find out, what type of learner they are, what type of gifts that they give, and you have to teach to that. You want to make sure that everyone is successful. You don't want someone walking out of the studio feeling frustrated or they can't do something. You always want people to walk out of the studio feeling that they've been successful at something.
Yes, that piece of achievement is sometimes lost because we're trying to get through an order, we're trying to get them to a certain exercise, or and then that sense of success for the client, their definition of success is more important than our definition.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you say a little bit more about what kind of learner you have in front of you? Like, how do you identify what kind of learner you have from the first time someone walks into your doors? How do you identify what kind of learner you have in front of you?
Well, I always say you have to be very observant. And I always think about Eve Gentry. She said that a good Pilates instructor has to be like a good musician. A good musician can't just listen to music. They have to go deeper and really hear the music. A good Pilates instructor can't just look at the body. They have to go deeper and really see the body. And so day one, when someone walks in, I'm like evaluating and analyzing them like crazy, because I'm getting a true picture of who this body is in front of me. And there's so much information coming to you, like for both physically, but also in terms of how they act psychologically, mentally. In terms of physical, I'm like looking, do they have that bag on their shoulder? Or is the hip rotated when they're standing? Do they hyperextend in that one knee a little bit more? So I'm getting a true view of what that type of person is. But also, as I'm talking to them in the beginning, or talk to them on the phone, prior, I'm also, analyzing, how the personality is. And sometimes also, this also helps me choose what type of instructor I'm going to put them with.
Yes.
So certain personalities work better with certain instructors. So at my studio, I have, other instructors other than myself. So when someone first comes in and they're asking about the work and wanting to sign up, I'm kind of analyzing who they are. And I'm not really judging them, just trying to really pick, what type of personality they are. And then I go, this person
You're
will work
judging.
good with.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, maybe a little bit, but but I'd say this type of personality would probably work a little better with this instructor or that instructor. And then first session, I'm constantly trying to get more and more information from them, really, really being observant. And that's a continuation as well. As you work with someone, it's not going to be static. Things are going to evolve, and you have to evolve with them.
I remember, that reminds me of one time I was working on some sprint work with a coach, and they were recording us doing our sprints, but then she kept the recording going as I was walking back to the line to start my next rep. And on my walk back, she noticed the way that my foot turned and made some adjustments based on that. And that taught me a lot about observing, not just when they're on the mat, but like you said, how do they put their coat on? What do they do when they go for water? Do they bend at their knees, or do they lean over? And just look at their movement patterns in their everyday life, even as they're approaching the mat.
Yes.
To give you feedback in terms of their movement patterns.
Because you're getting true feedback. If they don't realize that you're watching them, they're going to not try to fix anything. They're going to really show you what they always do. So it's giving you really valuable information.
Yes. Yeah. When you have a client that you've handed off to someone else in your studio, would you ever switch the person that they're with and be like, you would probably benefit from this person's eye now, or do you allow them to fall in love with the instructor that they have been working with?
Usually at our studio, they'll stick with the one instructor, but when it comes to wanting to work multiple days, which is great that people want to work two to three times a week, then I think it's a good opportunity for them to have more than one instructor. And so then this way, they're not just getting one perspective, they're getting two different perspectives, and they're getting different feedback, and everyone's going to teach slightly different and have different emphasis. So I think it's actually more beneficial in a way to have multiple instructors, but people do become very territorial, and so they do like to kind of stick with one person, so we don't want to break that. Yes. But it's a good opportunity when they want to work with multiple days, to say, okay, even if it is the case, I might say, so-and-so only has this time, why don't you work with this other instructor for this other day? And then it's good for the instructors as well to be able to work with each other.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, and that's just it too, when we're trying to establish that culture within our studios, it's really a challenge to keep that fluid so people don't, we are such creatures of habits that we almost want to keep it fluid so that kind of thing can happen. And for you too, Brett, what do you do with people who come in to see the Brett Howard show?
What does that mean?
Well, what I mean is if I'm in the area, I'm going to come in because I want to train with you because you are, X, Y, and Z, right? So do you find it hard to say, okay, well, she's awesome too, look over here?
Well, if someone wants to train with me, especially if someone comes in from out of town, I'm definitely going to train with them. And and then I treat everyone, I don't have any preconceived ideas about the person who's coming in. I do the same type of evaluation observation, and I teach the body in front of me at that time. So it doesn't matter what type of background they came from or what type of training they came from. I'm really looking at their body, looking at their movement patterns, and then I just try to give the best information for their body at that given time and day. I am an instructor, though, who doesn't mind, talking about other really good instructors. And so I do like to say, another instructor, if you're here, you might want to work with is this person or this person. Just because I think if they're in town, don't stop at me. There's so many other great people as well, and it's going to give you more bang for your buck.
Right. I just love the comments. Everyone's calling you up, Brad. Everyone's you're that good.
No.
100%. I'm just reading some of the comments here. Always encourage this. You're just saying about encouraging them to just experience other trainers is key. Um, yeah,
Actually,
Uni was saying like it is matchmaking. We're trying to connect people based on their needs and with the ideal instructor. Um, yeah, my wife says it too. You know, shop your instructors. That's the line she always says because you will resonate with a certain person, a certain personality, and really that's the whole point of core conversations. Is people know you. They could look online and just see stuff about you, but
mm,
until they hear you have a conversation about your passion for working with rehab or all those different things that we mentioned already, it gives people this perception of knowing you a little bit better. So
mm,
for the instructor, who is just growing their business, this is a great platform for people to just have this connection with the person behind the brand.
mm. People are so you'll find that most people are very multiple things,
Yeah.
and I always tell my students, bring all those things to the table when you're teaching. Bring all of your experiences, all the parts of you. That's what's going to make you a much more impactful teacher.
Mhm. I found one of the things that I'm really passionate about too is men doing Pilates. Just beyond, personal victory being my brand, Real Men Do Pilates is a handle that I just used because it just resonated with me as, a guy who just was super stiff, played sports, and realized that Pilates was a game changer for me. I almost made it my mission to just get more men trying this.
Mm,
And even within that, as I've, thinking about my business and unpacking it more and more, I recognize that there's a lot of people who've been doing this for a really long time that can dive deep into exercises and the minutia of movement. And I feel like at this point in my career, it's almost just more about introducing people to the work
mm,
more than allowing experienced teachers to dive deeper within it.
mm.
So it's just interesting. Like, what's your thoughts on just on men doing Pilates in general?
Well, my studio actually is probably about 35% men, which I find quite high for a lot of Pilates studios. We have a lot of men from all different ages. We have some
Amazing.
who are in their like 20s and 30s, all the way up into their 60s and 70s, and it runs the whole gambit. Um, One is that, I'm a guy, so,
That helps.
men are
Yeah.
going to come to a studio where there is a man. Also, we have Tactile here as well. So we have men who are teaching,
Yeah.
at my studio. And so that does definitely help. I find it's interesting because I actually find that the male clients are the clients that are going to stick with it a little bit longer. So
Yeah.
once you get over that initial, okay, you're coming in for Pilates, uh, they're the ones who are going to stay with you for a long time. They get really, really into it. And
Nice.
so you're going to, once you get a couple men, you're going to really keep a really high retention level with men. And
Mm.
so I think that's why we have so many men at our studio, because when the guys come in, they really like it. So many times, you've seen the wife and the husband come in together. The
Yes.
funny thing is actually it's usually the husband that winds up sticking with it.
I
Sometimes the
noticed
wife
that. Yes.
might
Yeah.
go and do some other thing. So you definitely have to teach men differently, though. I don't, I like to move them.
Okay.
I think it's very important. Everyone I like to move, but Romana used to say above the door of every Pilates studio, which is say this is a workout. Keep it a workout. Men are also very goal orientated. They like to um, have goals and meet those goals.
Yes.
Um, Also, I find that men do like some sort of consistency. So,
Mm.
and that's how I teach it anyways. I like to build.
Yes.
And so I do continue what we did the week before, and I just build on top of it, build on top of it, build on top of it. And I do find that men like that because there's a form of measurement there. And they can
Yes.
see, okay, maybe a month ago this was kind of impossible. Now this is
Mm.
actually much more attainable. So I do find consistency of what you're teaching and then building on top of it is another way to keep men coming back, because then they see I am meeting these goals and I am getting
Yes.
much better. Create a very strong foundation. Think of teaching like a building. Create a very strong
Yes.
foundation. Make sure that foundation is set. Then you can build on top of it another layer. Make sure
Yes.
that that layer is sound before building on top of the next, on top of the next. If you have a
Mm,
really strong foundation, you can have a very tall, solid structure. And
yes.
so that's my way of teaching everyone, but definitely for men, you know, you want to create that foundation and then build up on it, but always reviewing, you know, and,
Yes.
you know, reinforcing of what you've done before.
It sounds like there's just a higher level of intentionality with the men because they're coming from, okay, well, I did the bench press yesterday and I did 185 pounds and today I want to do 195 or whatever the numbers are. So they come from this place of metrics and wanting to be able to measure their success.
Mm.
So yeah, that makes total sense to have it consistent enough so they could see what challenges they were able to overcome this time that they couldn't last time.
Yeah. I also like teaching men because they don't chit chat as much as well.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
They like to come in and they like to do the work. So that's also another thing to think about actually when you're teaching men. They do like to come in and move. They definitely don't like to chit chat as much. I mean, that's not the rule all the time,
Yes.
but
No, this is general
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. Well, I mean, you create that safe space. So sometimes guys will come in and this is their only spot that they get to just go, okay, right? So then
Yeah.
they they open up because you created a safe space. If Joseph Price's original kind of principles like flowing movement and control and breathing and precision, it's easy for us to camp out at flowing movement, or it's easy for us to camp out at control, or it's easy for us to camp out at precision. And then the people are going to work out because they've been breathing the whole time, or we've spent 45 minutes on getting the precision of one exercise, that sort of thing, right? And it is a
Yeah.
continuity with the whole work.
I mean, definitely. If I, Pilates is expensive, and if I went in and I only do like 2 or 3 exercises, I am probably myself wouldn't go back because I'm like, I just spent $100, and what did I get out of it?
What did I
Like,
just get? Yes.
I mean, I think it's important to focus on that as well, but you have to think about where you put it, and so a lot of times. I know I do focus on that as well. I do maybe break down something, but it's not going to be the whole session. And I'm very intentional, okay, today I'm going to focus on a
Yes.
little bit more on breaking down this exercise because I want to work on progressing them to do something else, or I see some sort of
Yes.
restriction here. But it shouldn't be the whole workout. It should be, intertwined within the workout.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's probably the best way to unpack it. Like this is, I mean, even like showing like this is the gold star of the exercise. So today we're going to do this corner of the exercise.
Yes.
That sort of thing, right? And just unpacking that way. There's definitely a way to get that in there. So now that we know how to teach men, how do we get more men into our studios?
This is a hard question for me because, like I said, I do have a lot of
Yeah.
men at my studio, and I think a lot of it is demographic of the area that I live in. So I do live in an area that men don't see it as a girl thing. I live in a very urban area, and fairly like I would say in pretty open type of a society where there's not certain like judgments being made about different,
yes.
and so I didn't really have that problem because we do have a lot of men just coming in and just wanting to try it. So it's actually a little bit of a hard question for me in a way. I think it always goes back on to where where you live, and someone who maybe lives in a little bit more of a more conservative or rural type of area, maybe it might be a little bit harder. But I think in that case, then have them come in with their wife or their girlfriend or whatever, and let them have an experience with it. And then once they see that it's not exactly what they had perceived it to be, they're in. They're hooked.
They're in. Once they taste it, they're there.
Yeah.
Just to get them in. And the reason why I asked that too, because even doing some Zoom classes with instructors, like I have to just scan the room, right? I'm looking, I'm like, there's like only one other dude in this whole like 84 people on this Zoom class right now. And then sure enough, afterwards they'll find me or I'll find them, and like we have this little bond because we're the only 2 guys in the room, sort of thing.
Yeah. And someone just had said that they might be intimidated by a class of all women, and that
Yeah.
also is true. So
Yes.
I definitely at the gym, when I go to the gym and do my own workout, I would sometimes take like classes, and I did always feel a little bit weird being the only guy
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
class. So
Yeah.
that's definitely a part of it. Yeah.
So, what have you done? What pivots did you make with this quarantine for your business?
Well, I was always the type of person who said I would never teach through Skype or through Zoom or something like that. That's a
Okay.
huge pivot for me.
Okay.
I mean, I'm definitely a hands-on type of a teacher,
Yes.
but you have to adjust. And in the end, I still have my rent to pay on my studio, and I
Hmm.
have to keep my studio going. So I need, that was first when everything happened. I took about a week off to try to assess the situation and
Okay.
then think of where it would be. Thought about, of course, none of us really know how long this is going to go on. And for instance, we closed March 16th,
Yes.
and maybe we're going to be opening in July, maybe a little bit
Right.
later. I have
Yeah.
no idea yet.
Depending on the
So,
phase of the opening and all that stuff as well,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, so when this first happened, I went into it thinking, okay, this could be a couple weeks, it could be a couple months, it could be longer. So I decided to make a plan for all of those different scenarios. And so we moved from, I mean, obviously we had no option but to do virtual.
Yes.
And so we are teaching private virtually. We are also doing our classes virtually. Once we do get the go ahead to reopen, we will keep the classes virtual for a while, just
Yes.
because it's hard to have the 6 foot separation.
Hmm.
Um, but in a group setting, we are also going to give our clients the option of continuing virtual if they would like. Some people are not going to
Yes.
feel comfortable coming into the studio right away.
That is the
Yeah,
other reality, right? Like
yeah.
this may be a permanent fixture for some people.
This might be. There's going to be a certain amount of public trust that needs to come back for a lot of people. So I want to still give them that option. I don't want to, I want to keep things as open as possible. Then, when coming back, of course, being very safe with masks and gloves and things like that. So,
Yes. Yes.
um,
Lot to think about.
yeah,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
good thing that has definitely happened in this situation is that I have the opportunity to have worked with a lot of people through the years of teaching, and so
Yes.
it's allowed me now to teach people from all over the world. So I have
Yes.
a lot of people who I'm teaching in Europe, also South America, and different parts of the North America, and it's great because I get to go to Finland, one day, and
Yes.
then another day I
Yeah.
get to go to Poland or to
Hmm.
Brazil, and so I actually am going to continue teaching a lot of those people once everything is done, and we're going to continue with virtual through that
Yes.
way. So that was actually quite nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really does, like you said right at the beginning, it makes the world smaller. We got some amazing networks that happen out of that. And once the world's open for business again, I think that all of our businesses are going to be that much more robust as a result of
Mm.
it.
Yeah, in terms of the training program, we for the USPA we've been doing the one in the United States. The one in Korea is a little harder because of the time difference. It's a
Yes,
12, 13-hour difference, and but we've been doing apprentice meetings with all of our studios once a
amazing.
week. We been doing our continuing educations online. We had to do a little bit of the workshops online, and but at least it allows the learning process to continue,
Yes,
and then sometimes if you're in one studio and you have a group of apprentices you're working with, um, at a certain point, the different types of questions that are going to be asked is going to get to a certain level because there's only about a certain amount of people asking those questions. But with having the different studios on, it's been really interesting to see
mm,
the different perspectives and the
the
different questions.
diversity of yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, amazing. I mean, if we could just brainstorm for a second, what could an online teaching training program look like, considering how tactile cue, verbal cue, eye contact dependent apprentice programs usually are?
It's definitely going to have to change a little bit, and I think in a way people would have to wrap their way of trying to get people to understand and see things better. But one thing I've noticed is that my visual cues and
Yes.
visual observations have gotten much better because when you're teaching, you have to, I always learn to spot a certain way. And
Hmm.
because now I'm not spotting that way anymore because I'm in
Yes.
front of a screen, I've
Right.
seen the exercises from so many different angles, and I have actually a different perspective on the exercise that I hadn't been able to see before because I
That's
haven't had
fascinating.
that viewpoint.
Yes.
So, in a way, that might be something interesting moving forward is to then incorporate that type of learning into teacher training, whether it is in-house or virtually.
Yes.
Um, One thing that is going to suffer would be tactile cueing, which I think is actually very important. But
Very.
there's always a way to get around it. I mean, my idea would not to be to stick with virtual. It's not really. I do believe you will learn better in-house, but there's always something to be learned from everything, and so
Yes.
it's
Yes.
you have to see the good things in every situation. And have learned a lot by teaching through Zoom. One, your verbal cueing is going to get much better,
Much.
but,
It's so much sharper now. Yes.
but like I mentioned before, you have such a different view of the body, and from different angles, it's actually been quite amazing.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's going to be lost if things would have to stay virtual because, you have different circumstances that happen in the modules that,
Yes.
you'd have no idea that's going to happen. And when you're working on all the different bodies who are in that training, different things are going to come up, different questions are going to come up, and the questions can still come up virtually, but, you have maybe like 10 different bodies in front of you.
Yes.
Everybody is going to have a different need. Everybody's going to have a different
Yes.
way of wanting of how to do the exercise.
Right.
Romana didn't teach one person exactly the same. Everyone was
Hmm.
taught slightly different depending on their
Yes.
body. Those
Right.
are the things that would be missed in a online virtual type of course.
I think it's probably the only workaround is to have almost like remote sites, right? So you're partnering
Yeah,
with teacher trainers worldwide. So, someone doing your course in Italy obviously is not going to fly in, but then they know Gloria's there, for example, and then her site becomes like a teacher training
mm,
center for your thing, right? And so you just have to just trust that her tactile cues are good, her verbal cues, and she's catching the things that you like. She has to be your eyes and hands, right?
yeah. There's always a way to get around it, and I
Yes.
think. But I do still believe in-house is the best way.
Nothing exactly. It's just like you
Yeah,
can't parent a kid remotely,
yeah,
right? Like there
no,
needs to be something.
exactly.
There needs to be something said for just having that time and tutelage.
Yeah,
Do you have mentors?
I have a lot of mentors actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not just in Pilates actually. I always say we're a product of our teachers, and
Yes.
I'm a product of my dance teachers. I'm also a product of my teachers from NYU, my teachers when I was learning education. And there's so many different type of mentors. My parents are my biggest mentors actually,
Yes. Yeah.
and
That's good. Yeah.
but people who I like to train with, because I still like to train and take lessons, is Carrie Regan. I love,
Hmm.
love, love the way she teaches. I also make it a point to work with people who are outside of my, so for instance, my lineage. So I'm a Romana lineage, but I do like to work with people who work with Kathy Grant or with Corolla. So I try to diversify my instructors who I work with. There are a
Yes.
few that I continue to go back to, but
Hmm.
yeah, but I do have a lot of mentors.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always say if you have to keep yourself, going this way. As soon as you stop trying to learn or stop allowing those experiences to happen, you probably should stop teaching Pilates, right? Because then you have nothing to offer.
Right.
I mean, there's so much information, from hands-on as well. Like when I was working with people, like, through your hands, you can hear in your hands if there's any sort of noise. You can feel if there's a temperature change, if there's
Yes.
very warm, it gives you a good idea, if there's any sort of
Yes.
inflammation there. You can feel different differences in muscle tone. There's so much, or you can feel how much one leg stretches more than the other, and you can see that through a camera, but it's a little different type of information going through your hands.
Right. That's for those Pilates instructors that are watching this. Brett just said some next level hands-on cue stuff. This is not just guide their leg in a leg circle. It is, like you said, feeling temperature
Yeah.
and feeling inflammation and just feeling how a joint moves. Is there a clunk in there? Like, what is the body saying through your hands? That's the next level. I think that's one of the things we talk about, like white belt forever. It's not just to understand how to show, like use your hands to show someone where they need to be in space, is also to get feedback from their body and how the body is responding to that move as well.
How are you doing with everything in terms of the pandemic? How's your
Um,
business holding up?
the business it's holding up. I have some clients that made an easy transition to online. But I'm taking taking opportunity with this to learn more about Pilates, learn more about business as well. And those things that were kind of on the back burner, those are the things I'm trying to focus on now. But other than that too, Brett, like I'm really working on just a small studio, almost like a micro business within the center that I'm working at, where I can start to focus on doing more of these core conversations, some more virtual classes, but then also being hands-on with my clients that are in the space. So before we get completely cut off here, I do want to say thank you so much for your time today, Brett. I really
Not a
appreciate you
problem.
coming on.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you to everyone who is watching. I'll send you a link. I just do a quick edit on this and repost it on the Core Conversations Facebook page. If people have any more questions about your teacher trainings and then when that's going to restart. And other than that, just people, please reach out to Brett on Instagram, follow what he's doing and support him, and also support everyone else here. We see so many names of people that are doing amazing things on this comment section. Follow them, cheer for them, go to their classes, pay for their classes, like help people out during this time. Yeah,
Definitely agree with that.
Awesome. All right, Brett, thank you so much again.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Core Conversations. This organic platform has been made possible by amazing people like yourself. So if you're a Pilates instructor or a movement specialist of some kind and you want to be a guest, please message me. If you're in some other field and the messages just resonate with you, message me. I'd love to have you on. All of our messages connect, and for some reason they all help us in this battle. We're all in this game together, so I'd love to hear from you. Let your words be life to someone else. Check out our website, personalvictory.ca. Click the Core Conversations page to see who our upcoming guests are, and I will see you next time on Core Conversations.